coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is good there, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the By the Minute Arsenal podcast, the first one of the new year. Happy New Year to you, if you're listening, and Happy New Year also to two guests today. It's Pete and Matt. So, Pete first, good evening.
Good evening, Matt.
And Matt V, how are you?
Not too bad. Happy New Year to everyone. If we have too many matches like the one last night, I'm not going to have many more years left.
And you are by far the youngest of the three of us. I think it's safe to say, so that's quite weird, but I know exactly what you mean. I am, of course, Matt H, as usual, the normal sort of two or three of us. Right, well, it's what day is it today? I'm completely losing track of days. It's the 4th of January. So last night, as Matt is alluding to, was the game away at Bournemouth. But we've also got the Palace game to cover. So of the two games, I think it's pretty clear that the Bournemouth game is the biggie in terms of obviously the score and the comeback, but also the performance and all the things that brought up. But we will start briefly with Palace, and of course the highlight of the Palace game was, well, in fact it's an Arsenal win, but also Olivier Giroud's marvellous. They keep calling it a scorpion kick. I'm not sure it's quite scorpion-y enough for me, but perhaps that's just me being pedantic. But it was a great goal, whatever. And that was all on New Year's Day. And we'll go to Matt first because he was actually there. So, Matt, apart from freezing, what other memories do you have of the game?
Mainly just the goal. There was just a sort of stunned silence, really, for a couple of seconds, as they then spent pretty much the rest of the game just showing replays of that on the screen. I thought overall it was it wasn't a great game, but we did what we needed to do. I thought we were better against Palace than we were against West Brom. Palace offered pretty much nothing going forward, certainly for the first half, but I thought the main difference was we kept our width pretty well against Palace. Iwobi was in the middle, but Sanchez and Perez both stayed really wide most of the game, and that sort of stretched Palace. And yeah, apart from obviously Giroud's unbelievable goal, whether he meant it or not, we got the job done. But yeah, not our best performance, I'd suggest.
Yeah, I mean, my impression of watching what I was able to see of it was that the very similar, one of those sort of forgettable performances, but in a good way. You know, you get the points, you move on, particularly when it's around this time of the year with all the fixtures that are going on, which of course a number of managers have expressed being dissatisfied with, even though it's not exactly news. But it seems to have taken a few of them by surprise, including, unfortunately, Mr. Wenger as well. It was interesting that, of course, Giroud started. That was only his second time in the league this season he started a game, although, of course, that became 3 against Bournemouth last night. Ozil was in his sick bed, so we're led to believe, so he missed out. But Iwobi got very good reviews for his performances and, of course, a goal. Pete, any particular thoughts on the Palace game?
Well, I was glad to see that we didn't suffer too much from new manager syndrome and that Sam Allardyce hadn't got them able to defend at that point, and he still seems not to have been able to. So I think although it was a good win, I think we should be a little cautious about reflecting on it because it was Palace and he hadn't really had much of an effect, and they were there for the taking, weren't they?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough to say. I think the Bournemouth game of the two that we're going to look at is obviously the one that had far more interest for a number of reasons. The Palace game was a bit sort of pedestrian, but it did the job. I'm wary of criticising it, of course, given that Matt had actually spent real hard-earned money to be there, but and froze as well. But you were there to see that goal. I mean, I've certainly shown that. I was able to show the goal to a friend the following day who hadn't seen it, and he sort of made the appropriate noises. The thing I thought about it, we don't necessarily associate, or I don't, that kind of deftness with Giroud, that kind of nice touch. Right? How deliberate it was. I mean, I think it was an attempt. A good way someone described it somewhere was it's like a hole-in-one in golf. You're always aiming for it. If you get it, there's perhaps a little bit of luck involved, but the shot has to be pretty decent in the first place to give you that chance. So, yeah, I was impressed with another side to his game perhaps that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I mean, the move started really with his flick on the halfway line to Iwobi, I think it was. Iwobi then passed it out to Sanchez, and Giroud sprinted from the halfway line into the box to get on the end of it. So even without that finish, it would have been a great goal. But I guess that just finished it off to make it more memorable.
Yeah, well, it's a good point actually about the build-up, because it was a very slick move, wasn't it? From I've forgotten who it was now who made that first tackle just on the edge of our box.
Lucas, wasn't it?
Who, sorry?
I think it was Lucas. And
Yes.
Bellerin passed it to Xhaka, who passed it to Iwobi, who passed it to Sanchez.
Yes, that sounds about right with it. Yes, yes, but it was a great move all the way, and it's nice when those flowing moves actually pay off in a goal, which, as we've alluded to, was a particularly lovely way to finish it. Now, on an ordinary week, unless anyone else has anything else to say about Palace.
Well, only about that goal, and saying I thought one of the best things about it was it has shut everyone up about Henrik Mkhitaryan.
Yeah, and Giroud was onside as well, of course, whereas the United player was not.
Yeah.
I think we've got goal of the season wrapped up there, haven't we?
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. And I mean, joking aside as well, I mean, obviously we'll come on to what Giroud did to the game last night as well, but we chatted previously about him no longer being the first choice. The first choice, the only name you think of when it comes to a striker, let's put it that way, which of course has been major changes in that field this season. So I think it's great that he's able to come on when necessary, and by come on I mean start the game as well, and prove fairly vital, as he was also last night.
Yeah, showed we have options, and on another sort of striker who played, Perez or Lucas, whatever. He started on the right wing, and what became very apparent was that his right foot is very much just for standing on. He looked at every opportunity to cut inside. Luckily for him, the Palace fullback managed to somehow not be able to work that out, so it worked a lot. But yeah, obviously it's fine to have just one foot when you can finish like he did last night, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Who was Pete, we used to talk about someone who only had one foot. Was it Hleb or Arshivin? I can't remember who it was now. There was someone who was...
Winterburn, wasn't it?
Well, apart from Nige, obviously. Someone in slightly more recent years. I've gone completely blank.
Podolski?
Could have been Podolski. I think it's someone in terms of time between Winterburn and Podolski. And I know that's quite a big range. But it doesn't... Someone will know. It will come to me later in the week.
Probably Hleb.
I think it could have been. I think he was very determined to only do things with, I think, his left foot in his case, but I could be wrong. Yes, very interesting. Well, that's good to know. Well, it's good that we've known. Perhaps we shouldn't have made it public knowledge. So I imagine other people will pick it up sooner or later. So on an ordinary week, that we could probably wax lyrical about the Giroud goal for some period, but we've had another game because it's Christmas and New Year and the games come thick and fast. And last night, so that was Tuesday night, Arsenal were away at Bournemouth, and just in case anyone doesn't know, it didn't really go well. After 58 minutes, Arsenal were 3-0 down, and quite lucky to have nil, to use the old expression. But with 20 minutes to go, something happened, and goals from Alexis, Lucas Perez, and then Giroud into injury time at the end of the second half. Salvaged a point while throwing away two or something, 'cause I don't really know where you start with this game. Let's start with the simple question. We'll start with Pete first. Was it 2 points dropped or 1 point gained?
It's got to be 1 point gained, but it's put us out of the league title race anyway. So in that way, it's 2 dropped. But because I think we said last time we spoke that we all thought that if we won all these 6 games, then there might still just be a chance. And having drawn this, we haven't anymore. But I think you've got to see it as a point gained after a comeback like that in 20 minutes.
Yeah, Matt, are you going to agree or disagree with that?
I mean, yeah, considering what it looked like we were going to have, it's certainly 1 point gained. But I think it was, as good as the comeback was, I would still say it's probably 2 points dropped just because of what we needed. And also pretty worrying, again, to see us sort of throw in a performance like that. Obviously, the last 20 minutes was really good, but it was similar to Southampton last year, I guess. And when we seem capable of, in away games, not just losing, but sort of collapsing completely, it's hard to see us mounting a serious title challenge, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, you've both been quite. You've made the point that, given the position, it was a point gain, but in the overall scheme of things, it's a couple of points dropped, and particularly the way Chelsea are playing at the moment, I think that that has to be the way to look at it, really. I mean, let's get into the meat of it a little bit. I mean, Matt and I had a brief sort of Twitter exchange last night where I suggested at halftime that was our worst half of the season. But as I was sending you that message, I was quite worried it was only a precursor to what was about to become the worst half of the season, because I didn't see anything at all in that first half to give me any confidence that there was any turnaround possible. And you'd always sort of hope that at half-time something's going to be said or done, not necessarily from the manager, but from the players just saying to each other, right, come on, there's pride on the line here, let's sort this out. And then, of course, for a quarter of an hour of the second half, possibly even a little longer, it didn't really get any better.
Isn't that the positive aspect, though? That in terms of, well, as Matt said about Southampton last year and that sort of collapse, that last year we had no chance of coming back, and however long it had gone on, this time we did. And you never know, we could have possibly got a winner. They were obviously all really disappointed not to. But I think it is quite positive that compared to last year, it was a better result. Compared to the sort of Southampton result last year, it was better. And the fact that, you know, we did eventually turn it around, I think it has some positives. As I say, we all know it's not enough, and that's really disappointing. But there is a positive to get out of it, I think.
No, I agree there is a positive. I think you can only look at a comeback. It would be a very harsh man who didn't see any positives in the comeback from a 3-0 down with 20 minutes to go. My issue, I think, is, and I think you've both alluded to, is getting ourselves into that position. And it wasn't unlucky that we were 3-0 down, I didn't think particularly. I mean, we didn't, perhaps it was slightly lucky Bournemouth 3-0 up, if that doesn't sound slightly backwards. But we didn't deserve to be scoring any goals, I didn't think, up until about the 70th minute. I mean, I think we looked competent, but there had been those moments, and we all know that games turn on moments where, when it came to it, there were a number of individual mistakes which turned into goals. Everything Bournemouth was touching almost turned to goals, and we were lucky they didn't score 4 and 5 actually in towards the end of the game. There was the guy Gosling, I've forgotten his name, who had that open goal that he should have just curled the shot into the corner when it was, I think, 3-1 or 3-2. Little harsh maybe to go down to 10 men, Bournemouth as well, which I think must have had an effect on us getting back into it. But
we've got the third anyway. I don't believe that. We'd have got the third anyway. We'd got 2 back. They were falling apart anyway. They were very shaky. Going down to 10 men didn't have that much effect on them, I don't think. I think we would have got the equaliser, whatever.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Let's go into some detail then. So Mustafi was back, Ramsey started, and Giroud continued up front. That seems to be there didn't seem to be much discussion about that. What was interesting, of course, is after the injuries last night, we've now only got, despite having what seems like a million midfielders, is it Xhaka and Coquelin now the only fit central midfielders we have?
Xhaka and Ramsey, Coquelin went off.
Sorry, yes, that's what I'm getting for. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So now we're down to 2 there. But otherwise, I mean, in terms of that starting 11, that sort of made sense, didn't it, in terms of rotation and keeping people fresh?
I mean, I don't know how fit Mustafi was. I think it was probably a tough game for him to come back into, in terms of he's always going to be a little off the pace coming back from injury, and in a game sort of away at Bournemouth where you know they're going to be pressing you quickly, they're going to be running at you. I thought maybe we could have brought him back in the FA Cup and kept with Gabriel and Koscielny. I thought that had worked pretty well in the last 2 games. Admittedly, West Brom and Palace hadn't offered a lot going forward. Ramsey, I mean, on the team sheet, he was obviously down as right wing, but I think he was probably more playing at 10 with Iwobi on the wing. I don't know if Sanchez and Ramsey just hate each other, or something like Sanchez dislikes a lot of the team, but I mean, I don't know what that was. I don't know who started it, but
I think Ramsey's the only one who's got the balls to give it back to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all the rest sort of probably see him as a bit untouchable.
That's an interesting thought. It'd be interesting going forward to see if that comes up again as any kind of factor. I mean, let's go through the goals. Unfortunately, the Bournemouth goals. Obviously, we'd had clean sheet for a couple of games, which was all rather exciting. But then Bellerin, who of course we all love, I think we've all sung his praises repeatedly on Hit. What was he doing for the first Bournemouth goal? I mean, he's nowhere near where he should be.
No, he'd gone across to cover it, sort of at centre back, I guess. I don't know. You'd probably expect whoever's on the wing at that time to track back a bit. I think Ramsey was sort of looked at the spare man and pointed vaguely in his direction. But even with that much space, when Bellerin then came over, he sort of dived in. Probably could have just stood him up, shown him out wide, but he dived in, made it pretty easy for Daniels to step inside. And then I don't think you can blame Cech for that goal. It was at the near post, but Daniels was always probably going to score from there.
Well, we can't blame Cech for that goal, but I can certainly have I've got some thoughts about him for the second and third goals.
Yeah,
penalty, second goal, something you've noted previously. And also the third goal, it was through his legs. And I always find that frustrating when the keeper lets it in through his legs. I appreciate they've got to put their legs somewhere, and sometimes there's going to be just enough gap to slip the ball under. But I thought that both of those were, particularly the third goal, was particularly poor. And I know you've commented on the penalties before.
Yeah, the third goal in particular, he sort of just... Well, he didn't really move. He just crouched, and the shot wasn't hit with a lot of pace, but it just went straight through him. The penalty, it's always quite unlikely a keeper's just going to stand still and hope it goes down the middle, but I think I saw the stat. He hasn't saved any of his last 13 penalties, and he seems very keen to just dive the same way every time, which does not appear to be working.
No, I think that the idea, isn't there? There's a fear that if keepers stay in the same place, they'll look daft as it goes into one of the corners. But if he's 13 down anyway, then he might as well try it.
Yeah, he's got to go later because I think was it Wilson?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he saw him go, and that's why he rolled it pretty slowly down the middle. He knew he was going, and maybe he just needs to not go so quickly, so that at least the striker just has to make a choice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having criticised him, I'm going to give him some credit as well, because there was a save from, I think it was Harry Arter, wasn't it, right at the end, which was saved the point probably. And there was, I think, one or two other moments where you thought you sort of got more confidence back in him. And one of the reasons I certainly felt more confident in our goalkeeping over the last couple of years is because he's there, and he did show a couple of those moments where he showed the athleticism and the ability and the rest of it. So it's so frustrating when these things don't work out.
Yeah, he wasn't given a lot of support yesterday. Obviously, the first goal they walked through us. The second goal, I don't know what Jacques was doing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
He just sort of waited until he was in the box and just sort of elbowed him in the back. It seemed pointless. But then if the ref's going to give that as a penalty, then their third goal should have been a foul on Bellerin, I think.
Yeah, Pete, you said something about that, didn't you, on a message previously?
Yeah, absolutely. I think their third goal was a disgrace after having given them the penalty. And I think it was a penalty. I'm not arguing it wasn't, and it was terrible. But what Xhaka was thinking about it. And that's the strange thing about that game, wasn't it? Is that so many people did a number of things that you just thought, what are you playing at? And it was that sort of game, particularly the first half, and where they were just doing horrendous things that you can't... that surely they won't be doing constantly. That's another positive. Well, what I'm trying to feel positive about it is that surely this was just a number of individual mistakes all in one game, and hopefully that's not going to happen again. But yeah, certainly if Xhaka's push was a penalty, which I think it was, then the third goal for Bournemouth shouldn't have been a goal, because he should have blown up for a foul beforehand.
Yeah, obviously refereeing's come in for quite under some people are looking at refereeing very closely this weekend, or maybe that's just Mike Dean they're looking at it closely. I don't know, but I must say I thought it was Oliver, wasn't it, last night? I thought he was generally okay, but yeah, I think with both of those, they've got to be the same pretty much, and perhaps they weren't. Just something before I forget. Xhaka, yes, a complete mess, giving the penalty away. No arguments about that at all. I mention it because Matt mentioned it some weeks ago, possibly right at the start of the season actually, about the potential for him being a sort of yellow card, walking yellow card every game, and he's sort of living up to that a little bit. But his was the cross for Giroud in the last, well into injury time for the last goal. And actually, I've watched it a couple of times, and it's a superb cross actually. I mean, it's right in the danger area. There's no panic. It seems to be the right pace, the right distance. And there you see, okay, this is why we paid how many millions it was for him. That I don't know. I just thought Giroud gets a lot of credit for the goal, but I think the cross was worth noting as well.
And I was hoping that Matt could tell us about him in the Palace game, because I hear he was brilliant in that game.
Yeah, he was probably our best player in the Palace game. It was pretty interesting that El Neni was the more forward of the two, but Xhaka sort of stayed deep, picked it off the defenders, and just played long ball after long ball perfectly into Bellerin and Monreal, and just controlled that game, which made it a bit of a surprise that his pass. I mean, in the Bournemouth, Bournemouth game, he was on corners, and a few of those didn't just about made the first man. It didn't look on the pace at all, but yeah, as you said, Matt, his cross for Giroud was perfect, and he has that passing ability that we've probably lacked in the absence of Cazorla.
Mm. If he's taking bad corners, I like to think that means he's now ensconced in the Arsenal way, because that's pretty par for the course for a lot over the many years I've been watching them. Terrible corners. And we must mention Perez's goal, because again, that's another one. The more you watch it, you more realise, perhaps almost more than Giroud's against Palace, how technically proficient that was, because he just catches it perfectly, and he doesn't really have that much time to set himself either.
It was beautiful, wasn't it?
I mean, it helped it was outside of the left, and it curled nicely into the far post. But it was very enjoyable.
I guess that's when it helps, when you only use your left foot ever, that you get that good on it.
But yeah, good, lots of practice. That's good. All right then. So overall, we're pretty disappointed with the performance. There are a lot of individual subpar performances. I think I quite like that way of thinking about it actually, and hopefully that won't be happening on a regular basis. But we also think we're behind the eight ball a bit in terms of, depending on what happens this evening when Chelsea play Spurs. I'm not sure if I want to win. I mean, obviously both defeats are both in a massive punch-up is the standard kind of response, but which nearly happened last year actually. But I'm not really sure what the best thing for us to do is. Do we worry about ceding a place to Spurs, or do we worry about dropping even further behind Chelsea?
We can never want Spurs to win. Never.
That's fair. That's fair enough. That's a fair enough. A fair enough point to make, I think. All right. Well, look, we'll finish Bournemouth there then.
Can I just ask Matt though something related to what he was just saying about do we think that's the problem then? If Xhaka was playing the more further back against Palace, with El Neni going forward more, was that maybe the problem against Bournemouth? Because he was the more advanced against Bournemouth, wasn't he? With Coquelin when Coquelin was in there.
Yeah, it almost certainly disrupted the balance, I guess, which could help, I guess, us only having two fit midfielders, because if he's playing alongside Ramsey, you'd probably expect Ramsey to be in a more further forward, which would allow Xhaka to play in that role.
Yeah, so we can keep our fingers crossed that pairing might still work if we get to see it properly over a period of time.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if it was a case of playing El Neni just because we can before he goes, but whatever the reason was, it certainly worked against Palace.
Okay, and we just need to keep our fingers crossed that Egypt go out early.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's a pretty good place to wrap Bournemouth up for the moment. So, yeah, we'll hope for a better game. Now, we have a break in the league for a couple of weeks. We're Swansea away, aren't we, on the 14th, whatever it is. But I just wanted perhaps a word or a sentence or two from each of you. We're just over halfway this season now, because we didn't do this pod earlier in the week. We've now had, I think, 20 league games. So, in terms of the league, at least, forgetting other competitions, start with you, Matt. What do you think now, given we've had half the season, is a realistic aim for Arsenal?
Top four, probably. I think. I don't think I can trust us to put in the kind of run or turn up in the big games that we need to challenge for the title. And with all the teams around us picking up good amount of points, there seems to be a lot of competition for top four. So I think solidifying that is probably our most realistic target.
Okay, and Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, as I say, I think if we'd won all of these 6 games, then we might have even then we might have been in a position where we were thinking, well, just possibly if we go and beat Chelsea. But having drawn 1, no, we're not going to be in with a shout of the league at the end of the season. And I think now it's going to be the usual thing of hoping we can hang it to the top 4, and which is looking a bit worrying, isn't it?
Well, you've got 6 teams, haven't you, going for the top 4? It seems at the moment, with United sort of managing to string a few decent results together, and they're sort of keeping things close. So, yeah, obviously we will need to see where we are in the next few weeks. But perhaps, obviously we've got the 3 more league games that we hoped were winnable coming up, and then of course away at Chelsea, and then perhaps after then we can get a better idea. For what it's worth, I still think we should be going a bit higher, but it's getting to the point where it really depends on Chelsea. If Chelsea win a few more games, then no one's going to catch them. Because the thing is, we're not very close to Chelsea, but we're all pretty close below that. So
yeah, I think we should forget about Chelsea, whatever, and just worrying about Liverpool, Spurs, etc. And we're only 3 points behind Liverpool, so we should be playing well enough to make sure we finish above Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is I've seen lots of positive signs this year in terms of the way the team... It feels like a better team in some respects than it did last year. I'm not really sure why. It could be a whole number of reasons, I suppose, but maybe the way Sanchez is being used, Xhaka, other people coming in, I don't know. But, but ultimately, if Chelsea keep winning, we can't do much about that, but we can at least win our games, which sounds very simplistic, but that's what we can go for, I suppose. Okay, so we'll put the league on the back burner for a couple of weeks. So this weekend we have the FA Cup. So we are away at Preston. Now Preston are currently 11th in the Championship, so having a middling season. Do we have any thoughts on this game, or more generally about what we want in the FA Cup? And obviously the FA Cup's been a pretty good source of success for us in recent years. Matt, we'll start with you. Any thoughts on the game, and more importantly, what should we be aiming for the FA Cup should that be a priority at this point?
I think at this point it's probably our most realistic chance of winning something. So we should probably treat it seriously enough. In terms of the Preston game, I imagine there'll be quite a bit of rotation. I don't imagine Ozil's illness will be too desperate to recover in time to play away to Preston. I imagine he'll be happy to sit that one out again. I hope Sanchez gets a rest. I imagine Perez will probably start. I think he deserves that. But then, as we've mentioned before, we're probably limited with what we can do in midfield.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I'm expect for what it's worth. From my part, I'm expecting some I was going to say cards to be juggled. That's mixing metaphors terribly. But some some changes to the team. Although, so the point where I think we might see people moved around in not in the areas of the field we might expect them to see. So because I think there's probably a bit of latitude for some of them. So, but I'm not going to predict it now. But it'll be interesting to see the team come 5:30 on Saturday. And in terms of the FA Cup, yeah, I agree. In terms of it's got to be a target for us, really. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've got to take it seriously, but I wonder if he's going to go for more of a Capital One Cup team, possibly. I mean, I think Holding and Gabriel are definitely going to play, aren't they? Unless he maybe goes for Mustafi instead, as he's been out for a while, which as Matt said, I think he probably should have done on against Bournemouth. He should have left Gabriel in and waited for Mustafi for this game, but he'll probably play Gibbs. He's going to be right back, and the midfield pairing is going to be tough, isn't it? But I do wonder if he'll go for someone like Jeffrey and Adelaide in midfield as well, and have an even look like he's not taking it very seriously, even though I'm sure he'll think he is.
Oh, that's fair enough. I mean, no one can really criticise the way Arsenal have approached this competition over the last few years, given our pretty good record in it. But no, I sort of see your point. I think it might be interesting to see what happens. Of course, I don't really know if Preston's motivation. They're 10th in the Championship, so they're not without a sniff of playoffs themselves. So I don't know enough about them to know how likely they are to rotate themselves. And of course, they have even more fixtures than Premier League teams do. So I wouldn't know if it was an understrength Preston team, but someone will tell us nearer the day. But it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But let's hope for a pleasing performance. Hopefully, a bit of a break from the league. Perhaps there'll be a little bit of pressure off, particularly if there's some players who perhaps wouldn't normally be starting.
Yeah, I mean, away games in the FA Cup are probably not as, to lower league opposition, are probably not as feared as they once were. All grounds and pitches now, especially in the Championship, are of a decent level. So it's not as though we're going to be turning up to play in a swamp, effectively. So
yeah, good point. Yeah,
I think it's whatever team we play, we should be able to win.
All right. Well, that's a good place to end that little bit. We've been going on for a little while, but I wanted to mention one other subject, which I don't think will last very long, to be honest. It's the transfer window, of course, the January transfer window, which has been going for 15 years or something, I read the other day, which is quite staggering. Obviously, Arshavin will always be our January transfer window memory. Are we expecting, let's start with Pete for this one, are we expecting any business? Should there be any business? Will anyone be coming, going? Or is this going to be another one of those ones where we get to the end of January and it just ticks by without anything happening?
No, nothing will happen, but maybe Jenkinson will go on loan or something.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, Pete, what was that?
Is he fit at the moment?
I don't know. I'm afraid I feel I should know, but I don't know. I'm not sure he is, but I couldn't promise that. Matt, any ideas?
No, I have no idea. I haven't heard anything about a Debussy either. I saw a few weeks ago he scored for the under-23s, but I haven't heard anything about him since. So I don't know what our options are looking like at right back at the moment.
No. Well, let's try not to dwell on that too much in case it depresses us. What about Matt, wider issues in terms of the transfer window? Anything going to happen or not?
No, I would imagine not. You mentioned Arshavin. I don't really remember us ever doing a lot in January transfer window. Did Reyes come in January?
Yes, he certainly did. I think I was there for his first game at home, his first home game to Chelsea. Because I think we went behind, and I don't know if his first game, but his first goal. Yeah. And that was when we ended up winning. But any more than that, I'm afraid I'm a bit hazy on. But yes, it started well, but didn't really continue very well.
No, I mean, in terms of this transfer window, there were brief rumours which I imagine had no real meaning of Draxler, but he's obviously going to PSG. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a particular area of our squad you would look to strengthen in January. It's always a pretty tough window to get any sort of value, really. Obviously, West Ham have put in a huge £6 million bid for Defoe. So right. I would imagine absolutely nothing will happen from an Arsenal point of view.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression there won't be that much happening all around the place, but Man City might get desperate, I suppose, given their slightly stuttering campaign. But,
Chelsea might do, I think.
Well, as long as neither of them come calling for any of our lot, I mean, that's the potential danger. But I think hopefully no one's on the verge of leaving. No one significant, should we say, is on the verge of leaving. No one that we'd really miss. But that's a horrible thought. But so let's not dwell on that. All right then. Well, on that case, we'll wrap it up. We'll be back next week with a look back at the Preston game and a look forward to the Swansea game with their new manager, of course. So it's another new manager for us to see, which will disappoint Pete immensely. But there we are. We can't help that. So anyway, thank you very much, Pete.
Thank you very much, Matt. And good night.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And cheers for listening. And we'll be back next week. Speak to you then. Bye bye.